Good afternoon, committee. Thank you, Representative Roth, for the venison jerky. If there's any left, the gallery can fight over the crumbs. And Representative Blex, thank you for that wonderful surprise. I didn't know if it was a hunk of tire but then I tasted it and it was good. I didn't even share. Sorry, but
compliments to the chef.
Very good. All right. So, and then tomorrow we have, are we doing bread or are we doing, you said maybe cookies. What were you doing tomorrow? If you're not doing anything, if we have to wait a week, that's fine.
No, it's already in the fridge. It's cold proofing. It's pumpkin cinnamon swirl. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Word's going to get out. Everybody's going to run this, wherever committee you're on. So, all right. Okay, let's start with bill introductions. Representative Schwartz, do not put that in your mouth yet. So, bill introductions, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a bill to present sponsored by Representative Megan Steele and I, Kevin Schwertfeger, with assistance provided by Mr. Steele of the KCA, Kansas Cattlemen's Association, and Aaron Popelka with the KLA, the Kansas Livestock Association, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to the theft of property, providing that the violation of the theft of livestock or implements of husbandry is a severity level 5 non-person felony, allowing for the forfeiture of property used in the commission of theft of an implement of husbandry, amending KSA 21-5801 and 22-4807A and repealing the existing sections.
That's fine. Do you have an RS number?
And the RS number is 25RS0663.
All right, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. This bill will be drafted as a Agriculture Committee bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a bill, RS 0382, dealing with milk. It is the milk. Do I call it the Milk Trust Act, or what am I calling it?
Milk Marketing Trust.
Milk Marketing Trust. There it is. Sorry. No act. The Milk Marketing Trust. Any questions? Seeing none, the bill is requested on behalf of the Agriculture Committee. Are there bill introductions? Seeing none, we will move on. So we will have our presentation now, and Dr. Bowser was here last week with the commissioners. So Dr. Bowser has presented before, and a lot of good work being done at Kansas State University as she heads up sorghum improvement there. And so Dr. Bowser, welcome back to committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. It's an honor to be here before you today. My name is Sarah Sexton Bowser. I'm a native Kansan, grew up in central Kansas on a dairy farm. Now my husband farms alongside his family north of here, and I work at Kansas State University managing the Center for Sorghum Improvement. Today, here along with me is the voice of Kansas sorghum farmers, Adam York, CEO of Kansas Grain Sorghum. Proud to be here before the committee today, sharing a sorghum story. Today, what we're going to cover is to step back and talk a little bit about sorghum as a crop, from a global perspective, from a Kansas perspective. It is not lost on me that many of the members of this committee have your own sorghum stories, whether it's maybe some hands-on weed management or local novel marketing of sorghum into high-value food products as well. And then also we're going to move and talk about unique leadership that Kansas has in the crop to advance crop opportunities and improvement on behalf of farmers that farm in Kansas, as well as the broader region. And finally, I want to leave you with a few specific examples of the types of investment that this nexus of understanding the importance of sorghum for the state of Kansas, as well as understanding the need for leadership and acting upon that leadership has resulted in to improve the crop. So let's get started today. Here you have in front of you, we'll get these slides going. Here you have in front of you a global picture of sorghum production. So you'll see the circles that you have. We'll go back one. You'll see the circles that you have, and this represents where the crop sorghum is grown across the globe. Sorghum hails from sub-Saharan Africa, a very tough place to grow plants and crops. And a part of evolving from that location, the crop has evolved to be a resilient, tough, food secure crop. As we look at this globe, you'll notice another aspect. You'll see the coloration that represents the fraction of annual precipitation relative to annual atmospheric water deficit. And this is how we can start to understand water scarcity and water stress that farmers who manage and grow crops might experience in these environments. Taking a closer look on this, we can see production in the United States of sorghum. You see that the crop concentrates in the Great Southern Plains, with Kansas hailing in production of over 50% of the crop year in, year out. The crop overlays where we have semi-arid climates in Kansas. That's where we have a fraction of annual precipitation being half or less of our annual atmospheric water deficit. Farmers in those areas need crops that yield, rain or shine. They understand that their rainfall is highly variable year to year, and so when they plant their crop mix, they think about having a portfolio of crop tools that can be available to seize on yield stability and yield opportunity, no matter what that season might bring. Some of the aspects of why sorghum is a water-smart, hardy crop is really illustrated by this plant here. These are just a couple attributes. Sorghum, if we moved where we planted sorghum to a different climate where we didn't have hard-killing freezes, sorghum would grow continuously. It would be a perennial. It's our climate and our cold freeze that really puts the crop into an annualized context. What that means is sorghum is very plastic and responsive to the season. So if the season's going great, sorghum is going to continue that growth and development, move into that grain yield period and fill the grain that we as farmers harvest. But if the season's looking tough, sorghum has the biological mechanisms to idle, to use stay green, to keep plant resources distributed through that plant, to slow down water use. There's a unique wax on the underleaf that puts a barrier from the atmosphere pulling water out of the plant and subsequently reducing the amount of water that sorghum uses from the soil. So there's just a number of different mechanisms, but it all goes back to where sorghum evolved from. Sorghum evolved in some tough climates and really has made a good fit in providing stable, secure yields year in, year out because of that background of how sorghum has come to be cultivated and domesticated. As we can look at this water story from two different frames. One is from an irrigation frame, but also from a rain-fed production. Let's start with the irrigation frame. There's a story you may have heard, but it really goes to Kansas leadership in Northwest Kansas. A group of community members with Sheridan 6 enacted a LEMA, Limited Enhanced Management Area. It's where that community came together and identified a water use reduction target within their area and implemented it over a period of time. Dr. Bill Golden at K-State did economic analysis as well as crop system analysis, really wanting to understand as the community enacted and adopted this LEMA, what were the resulting implications from an economic outlook as well as from an overall shift of the crop mix. As Dr. Golden did his assessment looking at the first 5 years of that production system, he found that the economics were able to be maintained as stable profitability, a lot of that due to reduction of input cost, and so being able to maintain profitability at the farm gate. Also, we can see that sorghum became a pretty important tool as a part of the toolbox that farmers lean on to manage their crop rotations and to manage their water opportunity, with sorghum increasing in planting area within the Lima, the conservation production area, by over 300%. This resulted in this specific area over this period of time a reduction of water use by 25%, and even more importantly, it's the state of Kansas, a reduction of annual decline of the Ogallala within that specific area by 80%, an 80% reduction. And so as you can see, sorghum can be and is sought after by a number of farmers as part of that solution toolbox when it comes to understanding shifts in irrigation agriculture and irrigation agriculture opportunities. But this story also extends to rain-fed agriculture. The predominance of agriculture in Kansas occurs under rainfall, where farmers sow seed and look to manage a crop given the rainfall that they have, either moisture in the soil storage or throughout that season. In Kansas, the fourth most prevalent crop that's planted in summer is summer fallow, meaning that the risk to production and need to decrease risk from a farm gate perspective causes farmers to maintain land with chemical fallow and forego the planting of a crop over the summer period. As we look at grain sorghum and its opportunity to intensify our ability to crop under water limitation, we've actually seen in the past 10 years the #1 increase of sorghum planting in the state of Kansas has been when farm rotations have moved from wheat fallow to wheat sorghum fallow. Effectively, what does this do? This takes a landscape and it goes from seeing 2 4th of Julys without a growing crop to only seeing 1 4th of July. As we've seen just using landscape analysis and satellite data, this change happened. It's also bared out in the research. There was a study that occurred at Hayes and Garden City, multi-year study that looked at how do we displace that summer fallow period with a cover crop mix. And one of the experimental treatments that they used, they planted grain sorghum. They found that over this period of time, the only cover crop replacement out of a variety of mixes that actually increased soil organic matter, increasing the propensity of that soil to hold water and support a growing crop, was when summer fallow was replaced with grain sorghum, further proving that farmers do logical things and will lean on crop solutions in a variety of ways, including using grain sorghum to displace the planting of summer fallow across the state of Kansas. Stepping back to think about how grain sorghum fits within the toolbox of crops that farmers use, here you'll see this is USDA planting area that's reported each March, and you see that sorghum is approximately a 15th of corn or soybean planting area. What this means, and especially as farmer leaders have had thoughtful conversations about this, is sorghum is really important for the Southern Great Plains. It's pointedly important for the state of Kansas. But broadly, if you're in the private market, a seed company, your opportunity to have a return on investment is greater for one of the larger commodities simply because of the land area for technology adoption. We still, though, in sorghum, I call sorghum queen of the mid-tier crops because sorghum has a vibrant marketplace. We have a number of private seed companies. We have input technology companies that test and develop products to use in sorghum. We also have a rich and robust marketplace, too, a marketplace that consists of feeders and food innovations and other applications and uses. So really, the bridge and the need to address the gap is to go from how do we bridge research and development, ideas that are generated within the public space, to technologies that are extended into the marketplace. There's often a gap between that taking an innovative idea and developing it into a product, and that's where farmer leaders identified they had an opportunity to advance sorghum by focusing their investments and their priority to be developmental and translational, translating great innovations that happen in public research spaces, Kansas State being a leader in that space, into technologies at the farm gate and value at the marketplace. This resulted in a collaborative program that was formed in 2016, the Collaborative Sorghum Investment Program. Sometimes words do a lot of work. Collaborative does a lot of work within the naming of the CSIP program. The collaborative program is a partnership between Kansas sorghum farmers, the United Sorghum Checkoff Program, the state of Kansas, Kansas State University, coming alongside and saying, let's create a foundational capacity. They initiate a 10-year program that served as a catalyst to do the heavy work of development and to really translate ideas and innovations into tangible technologies to benefit the profitability of growing sorghum for farmers. As you can see in this first program that we have here, there was an initial $5 million investment across the partners, and that is realized in year 9 of the program, a total additional match of $9.3 million being matched to the program through competitive grants and private companies coming alongside and saying, with this capacity, we see an opportunity to further leverage and advantage our investments in the crop and bridge together alongside the partnerships and the collaborative new technologies for sorghum farmers. This program has been centric to thinking about yield, demand, and value, really the pillars of profitability of any business, but certainly of commodity agriculture, as well as value-added agriculture. And so the board of directors that manages this program, farmer leaders managing this program and providing the vision and strategy for the overall investments, has come alongside and thought about making investments and maintaining a portfolio that has stakes in each of those categories. Let me share with you some of those categories just to start off with here. So demand is certainly important, especially as the crop is often planted in areas because it fits the landscape. And so we need markets to take that crop because it's really being driven by a great suitability for the tough climates that we often farm sorghum. Here you'll see a number of investments really centric to building out local and regional circles of demand, making sure that we are creating value economies that can be built and optimized on the use of sorghum. This entails, coming alongside and identifying that there's opportunities to invest and meet the needs of the industry to identify the right forage sorghums, how to process those sorghums, what's the feed formulations, and what's the value propositions that can be realized in those next users, those dairy operations as well as livestock operations. This is coming alongside feed processing and thinking about extrusion and how do we work to capture emerging markets with high value, such as aquaculture. It's recognizing that in Southwest Kansas, we have a single feed operator out there that procures 36 million of starch bushels of grain each year, and thinking about how can you partner and build value by optimizing and selecting not just for yield and yield stability, but also for value in that animal performance and that next user. The next centric area that we've spent time and energy investing is really thinking about how do we adapt and find high value and novel applications for sorghum. So wanting to identify value streams. This, first of all, allows us to really capture the great diversity sorghum has. Sorghum as a crop has over 40,000 unique genetic accessions housed within the USDA GRIN germplasm collection. That is one of the largest sets of genetic diversity of any crop. And even more so, that genetic diversity is housed within the relatively elite material, giving us a treasure trove to identify novel proteins, novel phenolic compounds, novel starch or protein functionality to really build value. This is certainly captured within New Life Markets in Scott City, Kansas, really thinking about how to be innovative in those applications. We're doing research looking at bioplastics and what that can look like. We've come alongside with ethanol industry and looked at different processing technologies or even measurement technologies through NIR to help optimize their use of sorghum and take advantage of some of these novel grain characteristics that come alongside with the crop. The last area is really centric to thinking about farmers, those that sow the seeds of the crop. Sorghum, as a crop, has an excellent seed industry that develops elite hybrid technology, but one aspect that we had yet to really harness before the establishment of the Collaborative Sorghum Investment Program was pursuing native traits, so traits that naturally occur within the crop, developing tools and technologies where we can pursue those traits, understand the specific genetics that underpin the traits that we desire, and then design specific tools where we can fingerprint those genetics and then targeted integrate those into elite germplasm. This has really been a successful public-private model being recognized by USDA as a collaborative innovation network, one of only a few crops that has been recognized as really having the robust public-private collaboration worthy of a centric USDA investment. This entails working across a number of different seed companies, as well as a number of different public institutions. The Straight Kin program that we call this, Sorghum Straight program, today has seed technology in over 60% of all the seeds that's been planted by sorghum farmers. This includes tolerance to pests that have emerged, as well as improved traits for just the management of the crop from stable height to chilling and the like. Some of the traits that have been pursued, you can see here, are a number of different traits, and this list continues to grow as we think about what's needed by the farmers to create value and to create ease of management. We've been able to pursue tolerance to sugarcane aphid. Chinch bug is an emerging threat that we're rapidly addressing with this similar approach. We're also looking at how do we create technologies where we have limited transpiration, so when it's really hot and really dry, instead of the crop continuing to respond and respirate and cool off, helping that crop have a pinch point where it says, okay, this is the maximum amount of respiration I'm going to use to preserve that soil water for periods that are important for yield determinants later on in the season. These technologies are heavily sought after by farmers, and this collaborative program has been a solution to really bridging that gap that we saw in an earlier slide, where we have research and development, great public research, we have marketing entities in an industry that delivers technology, but needing to have a collaborative network to bridge the gap and create market opportunities at the farm gate. As with so many successful programs, it's really about the people that are part of this program. I'm happy to say that Dr. Terry Felderhoff, the gentleman in the cowboy hat, he started as a 4-H'er. When he was a freshman in high school, he went to 4-H with the same 4-H club as the Texas A&M breeder, and he said, I want a summer job, and I think plants sound interesting. So he started working as a freshman in high school in sorghum and has continued ever since. Last year, with the voice of Kansas sorghum and leadership that came alongside K-State, we are happy to hire him and are excited to see his program that started off in such a translational state, building out that sorghum trait program, continue to flourish and puts a strong foundation into a future that we're excited to build on. As I mentioned earlier, the board for the Collaborative Sorghum Investment Program captures the commitment of partners and the voices of partners. You'll see here we have 2 Kansas farmers that represent the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission. We have Clark Bibb from Coldwater and Kevin Kniebel, who you heard from last week from White City, along with leadership from Kansas State University and the Sorghum Checkoff Program. So certainly a vested group looking to advance the crop and continue to make sure that not only do we recognize the importance of sorghum to Kansas, but Kansas continues to maintain that dynamic leadership so we can find that synergy where we continue to have opportunities at the farm gate as well as the marketplace to capture the sorghum story into a realized story for the citizens of Kansas and farmers of Kansas. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
All right, thanks, Sarah. As always, interesting. Questions? Who wants to be first? Representative Droege.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that presentation. I was a little curious, way last century when I was growing up, sorghum was really important when corn rootworm was not controlled. And it seems, I guess I have a question is, can sorghum replace corn in some of like the ethanol production? Can we save water in western Kansas? Can we push to go with sorghum? And we even used to study the, silage, flaked grains, popped sorghum grains even for feedlot use. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Representative Droge, I appreciate the question and the opportunity to respond to it. You know, farmers, they really want to have choices to set a portfolio. And sorghum is just like corn. It's a C4. It's a starch grain. They have similar end uses. We have ethanol plants in Kansas that really have optimized excellent protocols, are eager to use sorghum because it's valued through their marketing streams and sought after through their marketing streams. Sorghum also addresses some of those other challenges you mentioned. So sometimes monoculture agriculture can end up creating disease or pest cycles. And so having another crop available that has a ready go-to market is critical for farmers to be able to break those disease cycles and be able to diversify the plantings at hand. You know, really what sorghum farmers have identified is to continue to maintain new technologies and keep the crop relevant. There's a need to bridge technology gap. You know, certainly that spread and planting of other crops is that magnitude that there has to be a vested interest really seeking those continued opportunities. So to your question, the markets of sorghum are, you know, livestock feed, industrial uses, ethanol production, and innovative food applications. Excellent markets we continue to build on, and there's a fit for sorghum as well as other starch grains into those type of markets. But sorghum is continually used by those markets today, and we look to develop and further expand those markets to create value back at the farm gate.
All right, very good. Representative Mosley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So China is the chief importer of U.S. sorghum, which is about 2.1 million metric tons or 83 million bushels, which is about 25% of the market. Kansas, as you mentioned, grows about 50% of the sorghum nationally. So without federal programs to prop up this industry, what will happen to the sorghum market if we have like tariffs that actually go through? And just based off the market, I think China actually buys 86% worldwide of the sorghum market. How are you going to be able to replace our market if we are no longer able to import as much as we're export as much as we're exporting to China? Thank you.
Representative Mosley, I'll start this question and then hand it over to Adam on behalf of sorghum farmers. But really all that I've spoke to today and all the market development that we have in the pipeline is really about planting seeds for future markets. And so sorghum farmers have been eager to capture the markets at hand, but also build future markets and continue to diversify those markets. I'll invite Adam to speak further on that.
State your name for the record, please.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Adam York. I serve as CEO to the Kansas Sorghum Producers Association, the largest sorghum state association in the nation. Members of the committee, Representative Mosley, thank you for the question. The simple answer is that the U.S. farmer and the Kansas farmer will sell to the highest bidder always, and China in the export market has been that highest bidder since about 2013, when sorghum, by some of the roots of the farm leader industry in the industry, opened up China, which has huge volumes, has a domestic sorghum industry, but isn't enough to meet domestic consumption. The top uses in China for sorghum from the U.S. are cultural alcohol called baijiu or swine and poultry feeding. Now, China has been the highest bidder, and historically Mexico has been that largest market, but the Chinese have simply outbid every other nation around the world. And this is something that's not without precedent. In the last trade war, sorghum was one of the first commodities hit in retaliatory tariffs, and that did cause the price to collapse within a few hours of that, which is why I thank goodness, and the farmers I represent, thank goodness to Representative Jorge's questions about the domestic markets, that we're able to look at those tarmacs of grain sorghum that were set to go through export and utilize them domestically through either ethanol or the co-products of ethanol like distillers grains, and help backfill that market demand with protein needs locally and build those circular economies. So speaking to the research and the commercial translation of the farmer investment dollars on behalf of our association, that's sort of why these farmers have gotten involved, was to try to find out what can we do to diversify these markets. When there's competition for the product, the farmer wins. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this presentation. With this collaborative effort of, genetic development, does that include sorghum as a silage crop as well. You know, and in our past, we've used a lot of that, and it's come and gone. And where would you say, are you in that space, and where are we at with that? And also with the problem of processing the grain as it comes through the silage. You know, I know they've made a lot of progress with kernel processing the corn. Where are we at with the sorghum?
Timely question, and appreciate the question. So one of the aspects of the collaborative program is to have this tie with industry and stakeholders, which allows us to have our ear to the ground on emerging needs. And it's been clear to us in the past few years that we have a need to leapfrog present technologies in forage and silage sorghums, as well as to understand better how to manage forage and silage sorghums for a number of end uses. And with that, we've initiated a program where we've initiated at K-State a sorghum forage breeding program. But what excites me about that is we're not starting on square one. What we're doing is we're leveraging all these genetic traits that we've been able to translate into the private seed bag in grain. And we know those genetic data points. And guess what? They're the same genes that control in forages. So right now, Dr. Felderhoff, he is rapidly cycling, integrating all of those traits that ease management, help address some of the pest challenges as well, into what we call a designer forage type. Alongside that, though, we also want to know how to improve the value of that. And so we're working with Dr. Billy Brown. He's a ruminant nutritionist at K-State, along with Dr. Jim Juilliard, and coming alongside them. And we've grown out a number of different traits and different types of forage sorghums. And we're working with our ruminant nutritionists and saying, okay, what's valuable here, and how can we identify which traits to pursue? These include traits that have larger seeds, so understanding the genetics that control larger seed to address that berry processing technology, sorghums that have a different waxy or starch composition that's more available and better suited to ensiling. So I'm excited because we have this multi-expertise, having our plant scientists, our animal scientists coming alongside and then regularly connecting, because it is a pretty urgent and sought after need to have solutions and leapfrogging of new technologies in sorghum silages. So we're coming alongside industry as well and having these very circular, tight feedback loop conversations on how do we quickly get new and improved sorghum silage technology out there, and appreciate some of these are really practical questions, like how do we process it, and understanding, you know, when our silage chopper is coming in and the time of development and how that's going to be proportioned across other crops, and just thinking about practical solutions to make sure that we don't have barriers to planting the right crop relative to the water opportunity on a given acre.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Talk about I know one time, and I see it's on the list here, the seed size, the berry size, you know, there for a while, it was I know you were working, I think, at one time to make those bigger, and because the market kind of demanded it. I haven't heard much for a while. Where are we at with that? You know, I know it takes a long time to get that going, but what's the industry, what's the market telling you?
The industry is very eager to look at increase of seed size. If we look at how sorghum's improved its genetic gain over the years, it's been all about increasing seed number. That's a relatively conservative strategy because the plant can be very plastic. Do I have enough water? Or do I not have enough water? And there's a lot of flexibility on how many seeds are set. And so we're coming alongside, maintain that yield stability, but looking at how do we target increase of seed size, and not just increase of seed size, but also thinking about kernel hardness. Actually having a harder, greater tension in that surface of that kernel allows for an ease of popping and preferred, just a preferred nature and storing of the product as well. And so thinking about stacking these kernel compositions. Sorghum breeders, who are some of my favorite friends and colleagues I work with, they always seem so much happier this time of year relative to everyone else. And that's because they take their sorghums. Time is money in the breeding and genetic gains. You always want to rapidly cycle. So we grow summer, we use greenhouses, and then we also ship all of our sorghum babies to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico to run a winter program. So they are there in the winter program right now, and there's a population where they have controlled genes for large seed and smaller seed, and they're putting that together and creating what we call a biparental population, so they can get a fine-tuning of what specific genes control those large seeds versus those small seeds. And once we've confirmed that marker in this winter nursery, we'll be able to start using that and testing that across multiple programs. But seed industry has been interested in it, which is good that they have receptivity, because the end users are very interested.
And that's kind of the bottom line. Any other questions? If not, I'll keep going. I guess let's shift gears and talk about CSIP, and it is up for renewal, and that's yeah. I'll just say I wanted more people to hear the success of what you're doing, so to gain momentum as it goes through the process. But talk about how you've leveraged this money to where you're leveraging that to get more, to do more. Talk about maybe some of those other partners, some of those things that maybe we wouldn't think about that you have reached out to, and as you kind of growing some of these things, and maybe whatever you can share that's possibly in the pipeline to look forward to.
Appreciate the questions. We think about the nexus of partners, so that over $9 million has been brought in. Those dollars have been in parties that have vested interests in food security and production ag security for a number of reasons. So part of this has been looking at federal competitive programs and finding things that maybe are a bit risky, too risky to ask a farmer to fund, to really test the ideas and see if we can leapfrog some barriers. And so that's been part of that. But what has really made me excited to see the feedback and investment is when we've had private industry come alongside. A unique provision to contributing to the CSIP program is any private company can contribute, but they don't have any ownership. They're not doing a direct for hire. They have to contribute to the collective good, and the board of directors then directs those funds to the highest priority for what they see as an opportunity to moving the industry. And so this includes everything from grain handlers. I've had elevators tell me, I have assets spread all across Kansas. I have to put grain in those assets to pay my employees, to be a stable business within my region. And so it's very important that I don't just have the greatest, highest yield every year, but that I have stable grain production in my area each and every year. We've also had seed companies come alongside and say, until the CSIP program was here, we were not using any of these genomic tools. We weren't leveraging any of the genomic information that we could. And because of those barriers that you've addressed, we actually don't care to own all of that ourselves. We see this as rising all tides. If all sorghum seed companies can have new traits that create stability in the crop, that increase the ease of management for the crop, let us play on making better hybrids if we can much more clearly pursue specific traits, the chinch bug being one example there. We've also had end users say, hey, we need partnerships, we have specific questions, we are co-located in an area where sorghum is a key crop, and so we want to understand, how do we retrofit our approaches, our methods to fit within a sorghum context? So dairy industry just made an investment in the program because they have those questions alongside the forage and silage. And there's a lot of questions they want urgently addressed. And so that's been one component of the investment of the program that really has been positive feedback of clarity of the value of the program, not just to the sorghum farmers, but to the industry as a whole.
Very good. Representative Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you address any thoughts you had about public policy? We really are not production people as much as we are policymakers. And as you look forward with, what you've been able to accomplish with this program, what do you see as problems with public policy and additions that need to be made to public policy? Do you have any thoughts about how we can continue to move this forward? We've got policy about water, we've got policy about biofuels, we've got a lot of different policy. How do you see, or what need do you see for public policy when it comes to this crop in food, in the area of food production?
I can hear that you liked Adam's answers more than my answers as he asked that question. But I'll take to your recall to set the stage for Adam to address that. You know, when you looked at the planting area, you saw just what the marketplace looks like. And sometimes there's market failures, right? And that's where there can be sweet spots for the vibrant conversations that you have here.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Gardner, thanks for the question. As far as the public policy conversation, that's what the association has been working on for the last year, engaging with these state water meetings throughout the summer in June and September. Really, our message from Kansas sorghum producers was that crop technology is paramount in the water conversation picture, alongside typical conversations like irrigation efficiencies, things like that, that allows for what is relatively new term in the food circles, regenerative agriculture, that Western Kansas farmers have been doing really for 50 years by nature. This is the Dust Bowl area where farmers have looked to intensify their rotations with sorghum over the summer, leave that standing stubble there in the fields, and then enjoy the benefits of that going into their next wheat crop, perhaps. On irrigation pivots, you saw the figures there with the Sheridan 6 Lima and a 335% increase in sorghum utilization in that control area. Ultimately, the public policy on behalf of the sorghum farmers that I represent, who are rotational farmers by nature, is essentially crop option, and making sure that sorghum is a viable crop here in Kansas, the sorghum state, for sorghum, which is the Kansas crop.
All right. Last call. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much,
Chairman,
Dr. Bowser.
thank you, committee.
Thank you, Mr. York, as well, for being there to present. Okay, folks, we have, Dana has emailed the annual reports, the agriculture marketing, multi-year flex accounts, the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, and the Kansas Agricultural Remediation Board annual report and the annual audit. So those should be in your inbox, and review those this evening or any time that you have an extra moment to put them on the floor. Tomorrow we have 2 bills, so I don't know how we're going to be here, though, but if you want. If not, they'll be available. Does somebody take a nap? Get that? What's in that beef jerky? So, but, okay, tomorrow we will start our hearings on bill hearings. House Bill 2064. That is from KDHE. It's kind of a cleanup bill. I believe we passed it last year. Or not? Is this the one? This is the one we passed last year and the Senate didn't take it up? Okay. No, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. This is it should be a fairly simple bill, but pack a lunch. We may be here a while. But no, we'll have that hearing, and then we'll also have Dr. Ernie Minton from the College of Agriculture, as well as Ryan Hoffman will be here to speak about abandoned wells. So we'll have a full day tomorrow. I will do everything in my powers to start at 3:30 because the team will be together to look at the week after. So if you had a bill, hopefully as soon as we have numbers, we'll work them, or we'll schedule hearings. And so I can tell you next week is going to be a busy one. We will probably have bill hearings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So probably at least 2, if not 3 a day. So there'll be a couple that probably will take long. So we'll probably have one on a couple of those days. But other than that, probably plan on doing at least 2 a day. So most of them are up on our website if you want to see what has and what hasn't. Hopefully, I was waiting for a couple today. They're not there, but hopefully they'll be tomorrow. So anything else for the good of the cause? Representative Minix. Representative Mosley, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to take thank you, Mr. Chairman, to introduce my intern, Ella Irwin. I'm sorry for embarrassing you. She's a K-State student. She's a junior studying political science on the pre-law track in comms studies. She'll be here on Monday. So if you haven't met her already, introduce yourself, please. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. That it? No, you got another
No,
one
I-
now? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I will speak. I'll introduce my OA, or my intern, Maddie Haggart from Paxico. Okay. She's a sophomore at Washburn studying international law, well, she tells me about her classes and it's way over my head. I want to make a real quick comment. You guys did an excellent job on sorghum today. I will take a small exception to the Dust Bowl territory or whatever. It was at one time, but through additional crops and farming practices, we've changed that tremendously. We've grown and learned and gotten better all the time. And I see the CSEP program as just another extension of that. We're always growing and learning and getting better all the time. Thank you for your presentation today.
Okay, seeing no other announcements, we are adjourned until tomorrow at 3:30.